Hello and welcome to SomerKnits episode 55. Welcome back to SomerKnits. This is episode 55 of this little podcast where I share all about my knitting journey, what I'm working on, what I dream about working on, and everything in between. A few thoughts and opinions, some other fiber related crafts, but mostly knitting focused. If you are new here, welcome. I am so glad you chose to join me today. And if you are a returning viewer, thank you so much for sticking with me and being a friend here on this crazy internet that we have these days. I know my intros are awkward. They are every time. I should write myself a script and just try to memorize it. But I always want to express the gratitude I feel to those of you who choose to tune in and share with me. So if you enjoy the content, I would love it if you gave it a thumbs up or subscribed. Every little bit helps extend the reach of my tiny podcast. And the smaller a podcast is, the more every single like and subscribe actually helps. So thank you again to those who have been subscribed for a while. I really appreciate you, and just thanks for joining me today. I have quite a bit to get through. I feel like I've knit quite a lot. Some of that has to do with the finished objects being smaller, and some of it just has to do with feeling inspired. So I think I have 5 or 6 finished objects, a couple of mostly finished objects, a few whips. I'm gonna try to keep it relatively brief on each one, just so this podcast doesn't get to ridiculous proportions, both for me to edit and for you to watch. I know that about an hour is usually the sweet spot for a lot of podcasters. And in fact, a lot of people are aiming for that half-hour mark now. I don't think I can get it that short, but I'm going to try to stick with that hour mark. We'll see how it goes. Without further ado, let's get into what I'm wearing. So what I'm wearing is the Feldspar tee by Hannah of Herb Garden Knitwear. This was a work in progress on my last podcast, and I was wondering if I was going to be able to get it finished for the Friday of Fiber Christmas in July. I did, in fact, finish it and block it the night before. I did end up going in an extra inch on each side at the top, and I just did that by sewing mattress stitch on the shoulder seams because I felt like the boat neck was just a little too wide for me, and even that inch on each side barely hides the bra straps most of the time. I could probably stand to go one more stitch on either side and it would be good. I made the size, oh, I forget. I'm so sorry. She has in the second version of the pattern such an expanded size range. I can't even remember how many sizes are available, but it's one of those ones somewhere in the middle, maybe the 5th size, 6th size. I don't remember. There's quite a few sizes in there, and the increments between are very small, so you can really customize the fit. Now, it is supposed to be a boxy fit. There is supposed to be quite a bit of positive ease. I really like that. I feel like the fit is very flattering. The sleeves are very comfortable because they are not tight. I don't like tight in my summer garments. It was knit on a relatively large needle size, and all of that should be on my Ravelry project page. I've been trying to get better about adding needle sizes and other information to those project pages. I used 3 balls of nitty gritty fiber arts in the merino bamboo base. So it is 50% merino, 50% bamboo, and the bamboo gives it that sheen, that like shiny, I keep looking at the sleeves because I can see it, and I don't know how well it's being picked up on camera, but it's got a sheen to it in person, and the bamboo is also a very cool fiber, very slick fiber. It just, even on the hot days here, feels pretty good. Now, I wouldn't wear it outside in 100-degree weather like we have been having, but in my air-conditioned office and in the car and at home, it feels great. So definitely going to be a staple in my summer wardrobe. I love the fit. I love the look. It's very easy, and I got this done relatively quickly because I was able to bust out most of the body knitting on our road trip, and I have really enjoyed wearing it. I've worn it so many times already since finishing it. If you hear little tippy taps, it is my dog wandering around trying to decide where he wants to settle. Anyway, the Feldspar tee, highly recommend the pattern. There are 2 versions. I did a gauge swatch, checked my gauge, and I ended up doing the second version because that is the gauge that I matched with the yarn that I wanted to use and the needles I wanted to use. I ended up using almost exactly 3 balls, and I have weighed this, I think. Well, I weighed it, but I didn't write it down. But I used almost exactly 3 balls. So I had bought 4 based on the yardage recommended in the pattern, but I believe I'd been looking at the original pattern when I bought the yarn. And then the second version came out, and like I said, I gauge swatched, I measured, and that's the gauge I matched. So that's the pattern I went with. And so I have an entire ball of this left over, and I have not decided what I'm going to do with it. So we'll see. But I love the subtle tonal look to this yarn. It's a color I didn't already have in my wardrobe, but that I really like. The kind of cooler coral colors match in with my light summer coloring really well. I have a number of cooler coral lipsticks, and then there's some warmer tones in there that just, I don't know, I just love the look of this color. When I was at their booth last summer before, I don't even remember now, whatever year I bought this yarn at Fiber Christmas, it was very tough to choose between some of their different tonals, but something about this color just spoke to me, and I'm thrilled with it. It goes with so much, and I love it. So I'm going to quit harping on this one because I know I talked about it in the last podcast, but that is what I'm wearing. Feldspar tee by Hannah of Herb Garden Knitwear, knit in Nitty Gritty Fiber Arts in the merino bamboo. So I do not remember what order I finished some of these other projects in. I don't think this was finished, and I think it might have been a whip when I filmed before, but honestly, I didn't go back and check the last episode, and I really don't remember. But I made a doodle stocking using the doodle charts from Pacific Knit Co. Now, just in case I haven't talked about this before, I did the cuff in just 2x2 rib. I did the whole thing on US size 5 circular needles. So I did the cuff in 2x2 rib, and then used the doodle charts to do the leg and the foot of the stocking. I wanted it to match size-wise the stockings that I had done last year, so I didn't use the gauge from the actual doodle stocking pattern, which is written for DK weight yarn. I'm using worsted weight acrylic, so I used my own stitch counts. All the charts are the same width so that you can mix and match them. That's part of the appeal of the doodle charts. And I have a few different doodle decks, so I was picking and choosing between the winter and the Arctic and stuff. So I did coffee cups, and then just kind of a pepperminty looking stripe, penguins. This is a snowflake. Now, because it is acrylic, you know, it doesn't block out the way that a wool does after color work. But I do plan to give it a wash anyway. Partly just because, you know, dragging it around while working on it and dog hair and other things in the house, but partly because I have noticed that good acrylics will actually still sometimes block out. And I know they're not actually plumping like wool is oftentimes when you block it, but it is just kind of a settling. So I just kind of want the stitches to settle in, and they will do that with some kinds of acrylics. So we have snowflakes, and then down here we have reindeer. I might duplicate stitch the noses to make them Rudolphs, but I might just leave them reindeer. There's another snowflake pattern, and then just a little Christmas pattern, and the toe and heel, just basic short row heel, basic toe, finished stocking. I haven't made a loop for it yet, so hopefully I'm holding this in frame because I have no screen or anything to see that. But anyway, I need to make one more before Christmas so that all 4 of us will have updated stockings. Otherwise, somebody is going to be the odd man out with one of the older versions that I had made the first year that I had my own house and actually hung stockings up at my own house. So that would have been in 2008 is when I would have made those stockings. So they're just basic cabled stockings. So I wanted to do some pretty color work ones and just kind of update. And last year I let everybody choose which stocking they were going to have. And this year I should have 4 color work ones so that everyone has a choice of a color work stocking. I think the kids ended up using both of the color work stockings last year, and my husband and I used the older cabled ones. So this year everyone can pick what they want, hopefully. I have written out what I want to do for the next doodle stocking, but I have not gotten to it for distracted reasons that I will show you in just a minute. But just acrylic, loops and threads acrylic from Michaels, and size 5 needles, and doodle charts from the Doodle decks. I love the Doodle decks from Pacific Knit Co. And if you're not familiar with those, you should really give them a look, especially if you enjoy color work, because it's a fun way to put together your own unique design. The next thing I worked on is not a finished object yet, so we're going to skip that. So I have 2 more all the way finished objects. So speaking of doodle decks, I am testing the fantasy doodle charts for Pacific Knit Co. That test has only been going on for a week. I think it's a week today. And I already have 2 FOs because I did hats. Oftentimes with her test knits, it is cowls. There's an infinity cowl and a single. I did the hat, and there's also now doodle socks. So you can get these blank patterns that you can insert the charts into. So the stitch counts in the blank patterns work for, or the basic patterns work for all the doodle decks. So this is a very low contrast version, and I am not sure how well it's going to read on screen. It reads in person, but it has that soft, hazy, ethereal, like, it's just a gentle magic we'll go with in person. So I used one of the castles. There are a couple in there, but I used one of the castles, and the top, if you can see it on screen, is the little magic sparkles from the charts, and they're just in a very light blue. And like I said, in person it reads, and you can see the sparkles above the little white castles. But in photos, I've noticed it's very hard to see, and so I'm figuring that it's going to be hard to see on camera. So I was doing that one real quick because it's a child size, and there's a birthday that we have to go to tomorrow, and I think that that's going to be one of the gifts. So I need to put a tag on it tonight. My second finished object, which I finished this morning. So I forced myself to not just bind this off, but to actually weave in all the ends before I could film, just so it would really, really be done. But this one has not yet been blocked, so there's definitely gonna be some tension issues and things that will get better with blocking. But this is my second fantasy doodle hat, and I went with witch hats, keys, flying dragons, and at the top, the magic sparkles again. Now, I did not do magic sparkles on the crown of the first one. I did the spiral decreases. But for this one, I did the 4-point decrease and went ahead, and one of the other testers had figured up a way to do the decreases while using the magic sparkles chart. So I did that for my decreases. Hopefully you can see my flying dragons and my little witch hats and my keys. Now my keys definitely need blocking. I feel like you can see the dragons and the hats better than the keys, but it's so soft and squishy. And I picked up the yarn at the Oklahoma Yarn Crawl last weekend. I couldn't make it to a bunch of it because we had a whole lot of back to school stuff happening, but I went to my local store, Get Stitchin', and I did pick up a bunch of different hand dyed from different local dyers because lots of people were there with displays. And this one is DD Designs, is I believe the name of the hand dyer. And I sent my daughter a picture of some different hand dyed purples next to each other, and we both picked this as our top choice. And I really like it. It's a good medium tone of purple. I picked up a Targhee base. It's a sock yarn actually, but I wanted a black or charcoal to do one of the 8-bit. I hope you could not hear my stomach growl just then because I probably should have fed myself some lunch, but we'll get back to that later. There is a hat pattern that Pacific Knit Co. has for an 8-bit hat, which has like little game controllers and little Pac-Man creatures and stuff like that. So I wanted a black or charcoal as the background for that. Well, this Targhee sock came in 115 gram skeins, so I figured there'd be plenty for me to steal a little tiny bit to do witch hats with. And then I used scrap yellow I had from a mini that was left over for the keys, and then Knit Picks palette for the flying dragons. And then this is some leftover, the pink is leftover Southern Skeins socks. I held the sock yarns double, and the palette double, and then the purple is a DK, so it's held single. So it's a DK base. My daughter wanted a slouchy hat. I hopefully haven't overachieved too much, but to get the 3 charts I wanted on there, I probably should have not done 3 solid rows between each chart. I probably could have condensed that a little bit, but to do the sparkle decreases and the 3 charts that I wanted on there, we have a lot of slouch in our hat. Hopefully that's okay. But I was told by the tweenager that slouchy hats are much better than fitted beanies. So since I want it to actually be worn, that's what we're going with. Also, the fitted beanie, I would not have been able to fit very much. I'd have had to choose 1 large or 2 small motifs from the charts and just do that. Otherwise, back to slouchy. This is going to be extremely slouchy, but like I said, I still need to block it, and that should not really make it bigger, should just even out the color work. If anything, I will not stretch it longer. I'll just make it wider because she doesn't mind it being widely slouchy. And then because the brim is a double folded brim, don't look at my floats, they're probably terrible. If I need to, I can run an elastic through the folded brim, but it is pretty squishy and feels pretty good. Hopefully I'm not moving it around too much and making you crazy. But This is one of my fantasy doodle hats, and I love it. I have already cast on for another one, but we'll get to that in just a minute. Oh my goodness. Thirsty too. Should have fed myself, should have filled up my water, but that's okay. We'll get there. My other finished object is not knitting, it's spinning. I finished a skein of, it's a combo spin. This is one strand of Porter Wool Co.'s Lover colorway from the Taylor Swift collection, and one strand of Butterfly Girl Designs Elsa. Now, Elsa is the same aqua sparkle that was one strand in the spin I did for my daughter's roadie last Easter. I was looking for something to go with Lover because I didn't want to ply it back on itself. I wanted to extend the yardage, and everybody said that the hot pink would overwhelm, that I had originally said I was going to ply with it would overwhelm it. And maybe it would have, I don't know. I went with the aqua because I wanted to pull out the aqua tones and tone down some of the orange tones that weren't as me in the yarn. And so I think that I was successful with that. And I spun a pretty thin yarn. It's probably about a sport weight because I weighed it after it was dry, and I have 106 grams here. And when I was putting it on the Knit-O-Matic before washing, it was 320 yards. I think I wrote it down somewhere, but probably not out here. It was like 320 yards and 106 grams. So I'm going to check the wraps per inch. I know it's got some thick, thin spots. I know it's not 100% perfect, but I do think it's really pretty. And it's just one, it's not even a full bobbin of each. I went ahead, there was a break in one of the yarns, so I just called it good and took it off and washed it. And I went ahead and plied the rest of what was spun last night. I had a little bit of Lover left over, and I have some more Elsa I can spin up. So I've left that on a bobbin. Gonna spin up a little bit more Elsa and then finish plying up what's left of those and hopefully finish it off fairly evenly. But so I should have a whole nother almost equal skein. It won't be quite as big, but it should be fairly close. So I should have quite a bit of this. It's going to go in my stash of trying to decide about a hand spun shawl. I'm going to line up all the hand spun that I've done once I have enough and like figure out what works together weight wise and color wise. I'm not even really so fussed about the weights matching because it's a shawl, but at least color wise, what will flow well together. I'd originally said I was going to knit for the Traveler, but I love how colors shift through the night shift, but I'm not sure that shape is as wearable for me because I don't twist shawls up like a cowl very often. Like I'm more of a drape it around myself person, and that big wedge I feel like might be harder to wear. So I don't know yet. For right now, the yarn is a finished object in and of itself. So we're going to count that. So that was 5 finished objects. And now we are going to move on to whips. I have 2 almost finished objects that we're going to count in the whip category because I don't like to mark something finished until I've done all the finishings, because if I mark it finished, my brain will like write it off as done and not want to do anything else on it. So if I don't mark it as finished, then it will keep nagging at me to finish it. I made the sweetest little baby sweater for one of my cousins. I need to block this. It has not yet been blocked, so the hem is still trying to roll up. It's a garter hem, and it will stay once it's blocked, and the shawl collar will lay better once it's blocked. But it will be a double-breasted shawl collar sweater, so it'll have 4 little buttons holding it closed, and I have ordered some old man looking like faux leather knotwork type buttons that'll look like, I don't know. I love the little old man look on baby boys, so that's what we're going for here. And that's what the mom, when I asked her about her baby vibe, that was kind of what she said too. So I've started weaving the ends in, but I haven't finished. I need to finish weaving the ends in, and I need to block it because I won't want to put the buttons on till it's fully blocked. This is Yarn Dragon Fibers Erin. I think it was a base she was discontinuing, so she had marked it down quite a bit. I bought 3 balls per the yardage in the pattern, and I only ended up using 2. So I have an entire 3rd skein left and just a tiny bit. I don't want to say a tiny bit. Maybe a 3rd. Let me see if I measured the weight of this baby sweater. I did. So the finished weight of the sweater is 171 grams. So that means that of the second ball, I had almost 30 grams left, and then I have the entire 3rd ball. So I could make a whole nother something with that. This pattern is called Henry's Sweater on Ravelry, and I totally forget who it's by, and I'll have it linked below. It's super adorable. The baby in the pictures with the little chubby cheeks and it all buttoned up and everything is just adorable. So I can't wait to finish this up and gift it. Baby's not due till January, so it's going to be a little bit. But I made the 3 to 6 month size, figuring when the baby is tiny, you can just roll up the sleeves, and I don't know, I just love it. It's so soft and squishy, and just, it was a delight to work on. It was so easy, lovely, getting dog hair on things, you know, lovely little raglan increases along the shoulders, and just garter for the hems and cuffs and shawl collar. I don't know. I was looking for the perfect little old man style baby knit, and this is the one I settled on. I am going to make a few other pieces, but this is just the first one I've gotten done. I have a number of other baby knits I need to do this year. I need to do 2 or 3 for November babies, and then I would like to do a couple of hats for my cousin's baby, so for the January one. So Henry's sweater is an almost finished object, so we won't count that until the ends are woven in, it's blocked, and has buttons. But my goal is to have it finished and marked off as done by the end of August so that I can count it towards August finished objects. My next almost finished object looks finished, but is not quite. This is a Leith hat by Ysolda Teague. I love the Leith hat. I love how easy it is to knit. I probably could have, should have, whatever, because I'm bad about sewing things up. Probably should have just knit the brim together where it folds, because to follow the pattern exactly, you knit a tube and then you turn it inside out and continue at a certain point. I forget how many inches of the tube you knit. Then you turn it inside out and you knit and then do the decreases at the top. And then you double fold so that you get a nice big squishy squashy brim. And this is the child's large / adult small size. And you can see that the adult small, child's large, whatever, fits me fine, but I was intending it for a child, so I didn't make it super long. So I'm not sure if it's going in my kids' hat baskets or if it's going in the gifting basket. I loved this yarn. I did have a little bit of color bleed in the blocking. You can maybe see that some of the red bled a little bit onto other spaces. Some of it was like that, is intentional in the yarn, but some of it bled just a tiny bit. I did forget about it in the blocking bath, so it was in there for quite a while, and I probably should have put a color catcher in with it, because I usually do with darker colors. But this was just my purse knitting for quite a few months, and then it got to the point where the decreases were ready to happen, and the decreases happened so quickly that I was like, I'll just sit down and finish it off. But I won't count it as a finished object until I actually sew the inside of the brim together. But this was knit using threads by Megan Nicole, and I forget what she calls her primary color, rainbow sprinkle type yarn. I think it's maybe rainbow confetti. But she has beautiful depth of color in her yarns, and I had ordered this not this past June, but the June before. So I had it in stash, wanted some easy purse knitting. It's so soft. I just figured I'll carry that around and work on it until it's done. And so that was, I don't know, a 3-4 month project just because it was carried around for so long. But when it's time to finish it off, it's just time to finish it off. So those are the almost finished objects. Next up is whips. Okay, the real whips. Not the almost finished but putting off the finishes whips. So I have two active works in progress, and one that I kind of started, and then there were so many other things to work on that I just haven't done anything else with it. So let's start with one that has a bit of a backstory. This whip is a favor for a friend of a friend. So a friend of mine contacted me and said somebody needed help finishing a blanket that was started by their mother, who died in a car wreck, and the blanket was for their niece, and they were hoping to have it done by Christmas in order to gift to her. So it is this hot pink, it's all loops and threads yarn. It is on size 11 needles. She had tied bits of blue yarn as stitch markers. I might replace that with actual stitch markers, but even though from far away it looks like just garter, it is actually a knit 3 purl 3 pattern. And of course I'm in the middle of a row, so it's very hard to show. But there was maybe a 1.5 foot already knit when I took it over. So it's going to take a bit of time. It's going to take a bit of time. This is the right way because she was doing a stockinette border that I guess just is meant to curl in on itself. I don't really know. I have her pattern notes, but it came with the box of yarn that she had ordered in order to do the blanket, and I'm going to do my best to see how far I can get, how big I can get the blanket. It can be hard though, motivation-wise, to work on it, because the reason I don't take knitting commissions is there are so many things that I want to make and that I am working on between test knits and family knits and things I want to gift and stuff that I really don't take knitting commissions. And I tried to say no to this one also, prior to having the whole story, just I have a friend who needs help finishing something. I tried more than once to say I don't take commissions. It's very hard for me to motivate myself to knit on things that are not what I really want to be working on, not where my passion is. So I've had it for a few weeks and finally started on it. I did mark the last stitch that had been done by the original maker, and I will duplicate stitch in another color over that area to designate it so that they know what was done. And I tried to refer her to the Loose Ends project, and it's just I'm a people pleaser. It's very hard for me to say no and stick to my guns. But I do know that this, even though I feel good about doing it to help out, I do know that it's going to be hard for me to focus on it and get it done. So I've been leaving it in the car this week so that I work on it during car line while I'm waiting to pick up my kids. And I've taken it to a meeting so that I work on it during the meeting because it is fairly mindless. Just trying to take it in situations where I know I have time, I need stuff I don't have to pay attention to, and if it's the only project in the car with me, maybe that will make me work on it. So, I mean, I'd love to hear any tips and tricks on motivating yourself to work on things that aren't really what you want to be working on. I kind of also wonder if I can just get it done faster and get it out of my house. Currently, the thing that's driving me crazy is that in the bag that it came to me in, the yarn was already put through these grommets, and I kind of hate it because I have to stop frequently and unknot or whatever the yarn so that it will actually feed through, and it drives me bananas, and I will absolutely recommend against anything like that where your yarn is trapped and you can't take it out. So I can't put this in a smaller bag at this point unless I want to cut and rejoin the yarn. And God knows I don't want any more ends to weave in with acrylic because it's harder to hide the ends than wool is. But yeah, so that's driving me bananas also right this moment. I feel like once I get through the two skeins that were already that way in that bag, I can do it differently after that. So looking forward to getting this done, hoping that I can get it done relatively quickly. It is large needles. These are, I don't know if I mentioned it already, size 11 needles, US size 11. So that's 8mm, I believe. Yes, 8mm needles, and it's worsted weight yarn held double, so it's nice and thick. As I mentioned, it is the loops and threads, and there were 2 balls already connected to the blanket in the bag I was given, and then there were another 6, I believe, in a box. So I have the box of additional yarn. In fact, I pulled a couple out and put them in the bag so that I would have them when I needed them. It's Loops and Threads Impeccable, which is 285 yards per ball, 4.5 ounces or 127.5 grams. This color is called Lippy, and it's a worsted weight yarn that is available at Michael's. So now that I finally got to the end of a row, I can hold it up. It is intended to be a fairly sizable blanket. I mean, it's going to be like, I think the original maker intended this to fit a twin bed, like as a cover. So it's going to be big when it's done. I have not done I used to knit blankets like this all the time, like big blankets that fit beds and stuff, and I have not done that in quite a while because it is a large undertaking. I mean, I did my temperature blanket, but that's spaced out throughout a year, and I'm almost finished with my sweet shop blanket, at least at the stage I want it to be at now. But I just haven't done giant full-size Afghans just as gifts in quite a long time. I think since before kids. I think the last one actually is, I had started it way earlier, but I ended up giving a very large cabled Afghan to my husband's brother and his wife when they got married. But that will be an accomplishment when I finish it. I just hope to finish it in time because there are a number of things I want to do between now and Christmas. I might see if some other local knitters are willing to put some time in on it as well, just to spread out the work and get it done for these people, because I do want them to have it. I understand the sentimental value. It's just the motivation for me personally to work on it is very difficult. 2 more works in progress. Oh, got caught. So this morning I had a meeting where I didn't feel like I could carry that giant blanket in and work on it because it was going to be a tighter space. And I was on the decreases of that fantasy hat, so I didn't feel like that was a good option because I needed to be reading the chart. So I went ahead and cast on for a 3rd fantasy hat. This one is for my son, and this yarn is by Scissortail. I think it's Scissortail Knits, but I'd have to double check. They're another local dyer. And this one, I'm going to go more Minecrafty Legend of Zelda with the colors. So I'm going to use greens, browns, blacks, and the motifs that I want to do, as long as I can fit them all on and it not get excessive, is a sword and a shield and an axe. So I have this green and I have a neon green. I have a brown, I have the charcoal color, and so all of those I can use to put the motifs on this nice green background. I like how it's tonal but not super variegated, and this time I'm just doing a 1x1 rib, and I will do it folded. I will fold it up and I am just gonna knit it together like I did for the purple fantasy hat, so that I don't have to worry about making myself sew it up later like with the Leith hat. So I'll go for 4 inches on the 1x1 rib, and then fold it up and knit that next round together as I change to the needle size for the main body of the hat. So the basic Doodle hat, the ribbing is done on, I have to take my glasses off to read these things, on US 4s, and the body of the hat is knit on US 5s, as long as you can get gauge. So the color work is done on 5s, the ribbing's done on 4s. I'm still working on my color work tension. A lot of times my color work ends up looser than it should because I'm so hyper paranoid about it being too tight. I go too far the other direction. So it's a work in progress. Definitely still working on it, trying to get better at it, but I have not been doing stranded color work for that long. So only about a year. I feel like I did some way back in the early 2000s in my early knitting, and then like put it out of my mind for quite a long time, and finally came back to it about a year ago. So that hat will be for my son. I have not decided if I'm going to give them, the purple being for my daughter, the green being for my son, if I'm going to give them to them as soon as they're both done, so that they could have them for like the month of October when everybody's wearing kind of fantasy dress up things, or if I want to save them and just have them as Christmas gifts for both of them. So I'm undecided on that. Neither one said anything while I was working on the purple fantasy hat. I don't think they even noticed it. And neither one has seen the start of the other fantasy hat because they were not with me when I started it. The only other work in progress right now is it's another Tolsta Tank, and I'm still on the hem. So I cast it on using a provisional cast on over try-it-on tubing. I like doing that because when I'm ready to knit the hem together with itself to make it a double folded hem, I can just use the tubing to put it back on the needles and then knit it together. However, it is fiddly as heck, and the first few rows, the try-it-on tubing kind of tries to grip the yarn and move around. So I have to tie the ends of the tubing like in knots and wrap it up. Otherwise, it'll work itself loose out of the stitches. It can also be a pain to try to move the stitches around for the first few rows or rounds just because of how grippy that tubing can be sometimes. So yeah, the first few rounds whenever I do this technique are painful, but it gets better. So like I did for my last Tolsta Tank, I used US 6s on the folded hem, and then I think it's 8s that the body calls for. I am using Myrtle, Queensland Myrtle. I don't know if I have a tag in here. Oh, I do. Queensland Collection Myrtle, which they call their vegan silk. It is spun from eucalyptus. It's 100% lyocell from eucalyptus. And it's considered a worsted weight yarn, but it's so sleek. I'm going with sleek as the word here, that it works really well for the Tolsta Tank. So gauge is not a problem, even though it says it's a worsted weight yarn. I love the sleek fibers for summertime knitting because they're cooler, and I'm in such a humid, hot environment in the summer. But I cast this on, I did a few rounds at the lake one weekend, and then I have not really worked on it since. And the reason is I got accepted to that test knit, and I got distracted by baby knits. And I'm not too fussed about when I get this finished because it stays hot here for quite a while, and it could still be tank top weather all the way to the end of October. And if I don't get it done until after that, then it's going to be a layering piece until next summer. But I'm doing the cami version, but I'm doing a folded hem at the bottom because I don't want the rolling of the raw hem. I really want it to hang straight. I'm not a tucker, so I probably will not tuck it in. So I want it to hang nicely, but I do want the V-neck. I may do I-cord finishes on the V-neck and on the sleeve openings, but I have not decided that yet. I figured I would get farther into the process before having to make those decisions. I did do the same thing as last time, cast on for the size 4. I will work the size 4 up to the armpit, and then I will rapidly go down to the size 3 stitch counts for the bust portion of the Tolsta Tank. So that is another whip. The only other thing I really wanted to share with you today is an acquisition I got at Fiber Christmas, but this is not just like a here's my yarn acquisition. I love watching those, but I bought my first fleece, and I am open to any and all advice you have on scouring, on caring for, on anything, any fiber prep advice you have. But it is a Gotland fleece, and I filmed some B-roll, and I will insert it, but I'm going to grab a chunk just to show you the pre-washed color. And I do have B-roll showing both the pre-wash and post-wash, but this is pre-washing. And it is not super dirty, but you can see that it's like a brownie looking gray pre-washing. But Kate let me take a lock to, this fleece came from Louder Color Farms. They actually put on Fiber Christmas in July every year. The unwashed fleece smells so delightfully sheepy, but not in an overwhelming way. Like, it's sitting next to me and I'm getting subtle hints of sheepy smell, but not like in your face. Anyway, she let me take a lock to the bathroom and she said, just run it under plain water and see how easily it cleans. Cause I was asking how dirty the fleece was and all that stuff there. I probably could have gotten it out of the bag and spread out the whole thing. But, I also asked her which fleece in the booth was her absolute favorite fleece. And this is the one she picked. And I loved the color. So I absolutely went with it. So I have some washed locks here and they are not 100% dry yet. So I'm trying not to fiddle with them too much, but, you can see here that they are, and I don't think I felted anything, but definitely I'm going to be picking apart locks for like quite a while. There's a little bit, like I can see some flecks of vegetable matter still in there, but not a lot. But the washed color of these locks is so pretty. Like, there's this gorgeous silver and the darker steel gray. And I'll insert that B-roll so that you can really see. So this is a small section of the washed locks. And you can see how just beautiful the color is. And it is so soft. It's not quite dry, so I don't want to mess with it too much. But it is so silky in my hands. And I just love the silver and black that we're getting in there. This is a hunk that has not been washed yet. I don't have a very large space to scour all at once. So you can see it wasn't a super dirty fleece to begin with. There's not a lot of VM, just some tiny bits that I will go through and pull out, or they'll fall out as I'm washing, but it's not very dirty. So it washes very easily and it just is so pretty. So my hope is eventually to get it into bats and then be able to spin up and see how I like it. But I have quite a bit of it. So I may not even get it all scoured before I go try to make my first bat. I'm going to borrow equipment to do that on. But I just wanted to be able to show you the before and the after of washing. And this is a Gotland fleece from Louder Color Farms that I got at Fiber Christmas in July. The comparison of before and after washing, but it's going to be such a delightful silver color, which is really what I was looking for. I wanted, it's falling everywhere. I'll be picking locks up after I'm done. I wanted a really pretty silver gray fleece. So I think that this is exactly what I was looking for. I am going to take it to a friend's drum carder and they're going to help me make it into bats for spinning. I thought about sending it to the Oklahoma mini mill, but decided that I really wanted to try scouring it on my own. Now I'm a little intimidated because the whole process takes forever. And I don't really mean forever, but I bought some unicorn power scour. I'm just going to keep messing with that if I keep it in my lap. So we're going to move it. I bought some unicorn power scour and rinse, and I don't have a very large space. So I've only done, I did like one mesh delicates bag at a time. And I've only done the one, well, no, I've done 2 batches so far. So I've gone through the process twice. And so it's all laying out on a mesh hanging rack to dry. And once it is totally dry, then I have 2 friends who've offered up their drum carders. One friend who said, hey, maybe we should try combing some of it first, but we'll see. I have like 5 pounds, 14 ounces of it. I know that Gotland isn't necessarily a typical breed for a first fleece to wash, but it is so shiny and so soft, and I can't wait to really try working with it and see what kind of yarn I get. But if you've ever processed Gotland or have advice on processing your first fleece, like once it's dry, if I'm taking it to a friend's drum carder, should I sit around and pick all the locks apart and like put them in a bag and be ready to just feed them in? I've never used a drum carder before either, so I'm just hoping that my friends will be very helpful. But yeah, open to all the advice. My kids are back in school, yay. And so that means I should be able to record more frequently. I know the summer months get very difficult for us just because it's so busy. So they are back in school. I hope to record on a more regular basis, but as soon as I make promises, the schedule goes crazy. So I'm not going to make promises. I'm just going to say the goal is to record more regularly. As you can see, I am knitting and spinning regularly and doing all the fibery things. I would love to hear what you're up to. Have you moved on to fall knits yet? Are you still knitting the summer tops? Are you thinking about Christmas even, or is it too late or too early to start saying that word? So just what are you up to right now? And it's been great chatting with you. I just have really missed this. So take care, and I'll see you all soon.